And now, today, we have some very special guests and a very special program. First of all, most of you probably are aware that last night we had a 4-alarm fire, which is a big deal. And most of the fire department, including the people that were going to be honored today and the chief, were out there all night. And so the fire department representatives are not here today. And in fact, some of the representatives of the police department were on duty last night relating to the fire, but they were able to join us anyway, and I'm grateful for that. After the two representatives that are with us, Admiral Houck and Chief Kerlikowshe, have spoken, we're going to bring them both back up here and give them a chance to answer your questions. First up, Admiral Richard Houck, Commandant of the 13th Coast Guard District, Guardians of the Pacific Northwest. The fact that Admiral Houck landed the job that's often called the most sought-after assignment in the United States Coast Guard probably tells you all you need to know about his qualifications. Day in and day out, there's no organization more on the front lines, whether battling terrorism and drug traffic, protecting the environment, or protecting the lives of those in peril, or just making the waters of Puget Sound safer and a better, safer place for everyone who uses them. The Coast Guard is always ready. Semper Paratus. Please welcome Admiral Rick Houck.
Good afternoon, everybody. Your theme today is heroes, and I was pleased to bring two Coast Guard heroes today. I'd like to introduce them. First hero I brought is electrician mate first class Tom Schneider. You stand up, please. Tom's currently the recruiter down in Tacoma. Please stay standing. I didn't say sit down. He's a recruiter down in Tacoma, and I promised that I wouldn't advertise. Did you tell him he could sit down? We didn't work this out, but this is pretty good. I'll have to remember this. And being a recruiter is being a hero. It's getting the new generation of Coast Guard people or any type of organization and bringing them in. It's a real challenge. He also did two other things. He's a reservist, and after 9/11, he was called to active duty. He spent 9 months serving and protecting the naval, of course, the naval facility over in Indian Island, the magazine over there. Following that, he joined Port Security Unit 313. We have units that have about 120, 130 people. And he joined them in 2003, spent 7 months over in Iraq and Kuwait. After the SEALs secured the oil platforms out off Iraq, the Coast Guard Port Security Unit went and lived aboard those facilities for about 7 or 8 months and protect them from people coming in trying to attack them. And those of you who know anything about economics know that Iraq is living on their oil, and the work that Tom did is noteworthy in that it's provided basically the economy for Iraq that's helped them get along. So please recognize Tom Schneider. The second hero I brought today, storekeeper first class Ted Roby, who is, please stand up, and don't sit down till I say sit down. Ted works on my staff up at the district office. He's a storekeeper. He handles all the money, so he's the one that I take good care of all the time. But like so many other Coast Guard people, last fall, he got called down to battle the ravage and the devastation of Hurricane Katrina and Rita. So he spent last October and November down there dealing with what most people didn't realize or didn't recognize because it didn't make the press too much, but the salvage of all the boats. Those of you who can imagine what the hurricane did and how many boats and how many ships were sunk or were not sunk and thrown ashore. A lot of the waterways were closed down, and there was a great effort to open up the waterways quickly. Ted was down there helping out with the salvaging, helping the salvage plans, helping the salvers, and making sure that the waterways got cleared up, and spent some time down there in the heat and mosquito and humid area down in New Orleans. So thanks a lot. when I get folks like you, I like to kind of give you an idea of what we do. And I'll take a couple minutes to tell you about some other heroes. And I just wrote this down this morning. This is kind of what's going on the last couple days. The last 2 days we had 28 search and rescue cases, people in distress, flares going up, some hikers we had to rescue, somebody with a heart attack. We had to take off a boat. And kind of unusual, we had 3 fires the last 2 days. You know about one. I saw it on the smoke on the way in the morning. I'm happy to say there's no pollution from that, the incident over at NOAA. We had folks there this morning, just like the Chief Kerlikowshe and Chief Dean. At the same time, our lawyers are heroes. We've got them prosecuting 2 cases against 2 masters who were drunk. We found a master of a freight ship down in Astoria, Oregon, pulled him off, and with U.S. Attorney of Oregon, we're prosecuting him for drunk operation. Similarly, we pulled a master off one of the cruise ships here in Seattle about a month and a half ago, and his hearing is today. So, actually, he's not going to be driving for that cruise ship anymore, but we're deciding what we're going to do federally. Homeland Security has become a new mission for us. This morning, we had 12 people down in Astoria aboard a ship, the motor vessel Andes Highway coming in. The ship was in Indonesia, and we boarded them offshore so we can make sure they had their papers right. The cargo was what the cargo was supposed to be, and the crew was the appropriate crew. If you ride the ferries, you've probably seen the boats we have on either side of the ferries, especially ones going to Bainbridge and Bremerton. Kind of interesting, those folks are usually out of Seattle here, but we sent our Seattle folks this weekend up to do some recreational boating safety boardings. We boarded a whole bunch of wrecked boaters out here in the Sound. We pulled 2 over for boating while intoxicated, and we terminated 2 of them because they didn't have any PFDs, or personal flotation devices. And now actually the week before, they went up and they were involved in a drug operation up on the coast, interdicting BC bud, or the marijuana from British Columbia. So while they're up there, we've got actually the folks today who are escorting a ferry from San Diego. We flew up our maritime safety and security team from San Diego to backfill our folks in Seattle who were up doing the other missions. As I was sitting in my office, I saw the Coast Guard cutter Midget heading out to sea. She'll be heading over to Iraq for 6 months in November. So she's getting underway today for preparations. Last week, I joined with Senator Murray to announce the award of a $600 million contract to Marinette Marine and their subcontractor, Kwijack Marine, over in Ballard. They're going to build up to 250 new boats for the Coast Guard. Quite an impressive operation that they have over there. Today, the Coast Guard cutter Houck is about 60 miles off the Washington and Oregon coast, following the whiting fleet, the fishing fleet that are fishing for whiting. They're out there to make sure they don't take too many whiting, and they don't take the wrong things, and they don't go in the wrong places, and to make sure they're safe. Coast Guard cutter Healy and the Polar Sea are 2 icebreakers. They're getting ready. The Sea is going to be going down to Antarctica in our winter, their summer. This is the International Polar Year, so they're having a big event as well as the normal breaking out of McMurdo Sound. The Healy will be heading up in about a month and a half to do some operations and scientific research at the North Pole. Henry Blake is a buoy tender. She just got underway this morning to set buoys up in the San Juan Islands. And there's a whole raft of people, myself included, who are standing by for hurricanes. Following last year's Katrina, Rita, and Wilma issues, a lot of the Coast Guard people have gotten tagged to do hurricane operations. I'm the person that's going to be the principal federal official if a bad hurricane hits Puerto Rico or Virgin Islands. So if something comes, I'm gone. So all in all, there's a whole bunch of us, about 2,000 here in the Northwest. There's about 50,000 Coast Guard people nationwide who are serving you, and I think they all are just doing a tremendous job, and I thank you for your support.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve Leahy, and I'm the president of the Greater Seattle Chamber. But your new president, Admiral Bill, asked me if I would introduce Chief Kerlikowshe, and I'm greatly honored to do that. And then the chief just told me, make it really short. So we'll do that, too. He's been our chief since the year 2000. I think you all know that he came to us after serving a second stint at the U.S. Department of Justice back in D.C. He's been a police chief in Florida and in Buffalo, New York. He just received an award a few months ago by a national police leadership organization, and he just reminded me that he's also an honorary member of this club that former President Ralph Monroe inducted him a few years ago. So I think we all are lucky to have him here, both as our chief public safety and criminal justice leader. He's a great community leader and a leader of people, and he wants to now recognize some of his great teammates. Chief Kerlikowshe.
Thanks. We'll move quickly. I have a number of people here. I know you wanted some information, background information on Admiral Bill. Unfortunately, the courts have sealed those records. You know, let me first mention, too, I know that Greg Dean and I talked about this, our fire chief. We're partners in public safety, and he very much wanted to be here. He was very much looking forward to this. Seattle Police Department, the Seattle Fire Department do a lot of great work together, and I think you're very fortunate to have people in both organizations that are so devoted. We do keep a bit of a sense of humor. I mentioned to Greg, I said, you know why God invented police officers? And he said, no. And I said, well, so firefighters could have heroes. He said to me, well, you know, I had a bunch of police officers and firefighters all together the other day. He said, they all want the same thing. He said, they all want to be firefighters. As I call out the officers, I'll just ask them to stand, and when I finish a little bit of the background, I think you'll be as impressed and as proud of them as I am. Officer Jacob Haynes and Officer J.D. Parnell. March 1st, Jacob was on patrol, saw a house on fire, flames coming out, smelled smoke. In policing, we call that a clue. Jacob was able to call in the report, kick in the front door, rescue one individual, go around to the side, break out a window. J.D. Then showed up immediately to assist him, along with a Seattle firefighter, Jason Lynch, who arrived at the scene. They were able to untangle a woman from the bedclothes and where she was kind of trapped and get her out, and saved everyone in the house. And congratulations to them. And I'm going to keep on moving. Thanks. I'll let them be seated. Officer Steve Leonard is here. I think many of you know this account, but on March 25th, Steve was on patrol in Capitol Hill in the early morning hours and heard gunshots. We got 14 calls in the residential neighborhood within minutes about gunshots coming from a home. Steve arrived on the scene by himself very quickly, saw one wounded individual, other people streaming from the house. He was able to put them in a safe location. He put himself between those individuals that had run from the house and the young man that was wounded, and the house where the shooting occurred. As he approached the front of the house, a man came down the steps with a pistol-grip 12-gauge shotgun, bandoliers of ammunition, and Steve announced that he was a Seattle police officer, told him to drop the gun, and this individual committed suicide rather than surrender. We can only speculate what else might have occurred, but half a block away where this individual's truck was parked was a .223 rifle with 30-round clips banded together, so he had up to 90 rounds, plus several hundred rounds in a duffel bag in the front. So congratulations, Steve. Officer Rob Surley is not here, and I know he very much wanted to be here. Every person that we contacted has appeared, and I think I've gotten them all, and we'll make sure I get to each one. But Rob's father passed away this week, and so it's It's very touching that Rotary is honoring and recognizing him as a result of this. But Rob got a call of a person who had just left a bar down on Alaskan Way, and the person was threatening suicide by the time Rob got down there. This individual had jumped into the water. We know how dangerous those waters are, and in fact, he recognized one of our officers who lost his life in the line of duty last year, Officer Jackson Lone, out trying to secure a tugboat. So we know these waters are cold and they're very dangerous. But Rob, along with a citizen, jumped into the water. They were able to get this person out and save his life. Officer Marie Gochner is a brand new officer on the Seattle Police Department. We teach our officers, we try to give them the very best of training. We teach our officers to take command and control at situations. They are the force of authority, and people turn to them and look to them to take direction. And she was rushing to the scene of a very serious accident on Alki. And upon arrival, she where the injured persons were, she was able to give CPR until the fire department took command. It was a very horrific scene with the injuries and the deaths of two individuals. And she not only did the CPR, but she also was able to give direction and take control of that scene. So congratulations, Mary. And Officer Carla Cobain, okay, thanks, Carla. I got to see everybody. I didn't see Carla there. She was at the scene of an accident, of a suicidal individual who had climbed to the top of a crane, which seems to be kind of common here lately in Seattle. But he climbed to the top of a crane, and when she went and spoke with him, he was certainly distraught, but he had also attempted to get some help, and he had been refused treatment because they were busy and because they didn't have enough room at the inn. She spent a great deal of time talking him down off that crane, but that really wasn't enough. She went with him to the hospital to make sure that he got the kind of care and follow-up and treatment, and that was great work. And is parking enforcement officer, is Darlene Stewart here? Darlene? Now this is a great story. By the way, parking enforcement, so I know this is, if you got any tickets while you were down here today, that's really too bad. And Darlene was working in the downtown area and came across a man breaking into a car. She apprehended the person, and she explained to him that it would be very unwise for him to resist arrest. And as you can tell from her stature, she's an intimidating individual. She made the arrest, and until the police officers got there and actually were able to apprehend him. So congratulations to you. Sergeant Paul Kloss and Officer Glenn Cook, motorcycle officers working in the downtown area. A citizen flagged them down and said that there was a man just down the street who was not breathing. Paul and Officer Cook responded to that location right downtown and began two-person CPR. And after 3 cycles, the victim began breathing on his own, and all of the onlookers began applauding and cheering, which is something we're not always used to. Let me also mention, Paul just returned from an extended tour in Iraq. Congratulations to both of you. Usually if we see people with signs in the downtown area, we think it's a protest of some kind. And the last I'm going to mention, Officer Dorothy Kim. And Dorothy is assigned to the Southwest Precinct, and she received a call of a person who was drowning off Alki. The person was being dragged by several citizens up onto the beach. She was immediately able to relieve one of the citizens and began CPR and giving direction to another person so that they could give two-person CPR. And she did so heroically until the firefighters arrived and took over. Congratulations. And I think we should go right then to Bill and questions. I get a chance to speak to you regularly, and I think you know the good works of the Seattle Police Department, but I think it's mostly spoken in the accounts of what I just told you about. Thank you, Bill.
Well, thanks. I just want to say to both of you, thank you for coming, and I want to encourage you that you come back again when you have opportunity. It's one thing to be able to present an award in the station house or down at the headquarters, but to be able to honor these outstanding young men and women, and you are young to me, believe me, in front of a group of citizens like this makes a real difference. We have time for a couple questions. Here we've got two of the premier, most important public safety officials in our community, and you have a chance to ask them whatever's on your mind. Over here.
Yes, sir. The 9/11 Commission reported that there wasn't enough coordination between all the different organizations. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your impression is of how ready we are and how good the coordination is?
I think we'll both be able to answer that. We're very fortunate here in the Northwest. The federal agencies and the local law enforcement agencies have a great deal of cooperation. We've been fortunate also to be able to spend a lot of time with Senator Horton, who was on the 9/11 Commission. He has actually used this area as a model of that kind of work. We have interoperability, meaning that many of our radio systems can talk together. We have joint command posts with seats for the Coast Guard, and in fact the Coast Guard has seats for us so that if something happens. We know just the other day when 21 people were smuggled into the port, how the Port Authority Police, the local Seattle Police Department, the Coast Guard, and everyone else worked together to be able to secure those individuals very quickly. All of you should really take a great deal of satisfaction in knowing how hard we work at this effort and what good cooperation there is. Admiral?
Again, I came here from D.C., and D.C. not many people cooperated that often. It's the opposite here. As Chief said, we all work very, very well together, all the federal partners, the state partners, local partners, industry, and people in non-government organizations. It's amazing the amount of work that we can get done working jointly with the different folks, whether it's working together with the Mounties and the Customs Border Protection up on the coast, or the North Coast, or the West Coast, working with the local people and local prosecutors and local law enforcement, or here in Seattle. It's just phenomenal. The operations we have down the waterfront and cooperation with the folks from King County over in Lake Washington.
Any other questions? Oh, Ralph, you don't need a mic.
Before we're done, give us the chance to stand up and thank these officers with applause for the things for so long.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you. I also want to mention that Assistant Police Chief Nick Metz is here. Would you stand up, Nick? Hey, there he is. Well, let me get the script. I just got hooked by a past president. That's a good thing. Well, there it is. 1 down, 50 to go. I have a lot to learn. I want to thank the Hyatt. I don't know if, is Terry here yet? Yeah, right here. Terry Walker. Terry is the banquet manager here at the Hyatt. Let me ask a question. How many of you ever hosted an event here at the Hyatt? You see there, Terry, all this hard work pays off. And my hand is up. If you've never looked at the facilities, they have a lot of facilities that aren't obvious. And I asked Terry to open the amphitheater for you. If you go down the hall to my left and to the end and go down the steps, there's a fabulous little, about 130 people? About 150 in the amphitheater. If you've never seen it and you have those kind of events, you ought to take a look at it. It's a great facility. Anyway, thanks to the Hyatt. You always do a great job for us. We're grateful. I want to thank everybody that participated today, especially our speakers and our honored guests. I was going to have them stand up here, Ralph, but you know it's it's okay. And I hope that you'll come back. Next week, we're going to be at the Westin, and Franklin Odo of the Smithsonian is going to talk to us about the importance of the Wing Luke Museum. And we're also going to have an opportunity, like I said, to recruit everybody that's not on a committee onto a committee. You won't want to miss that. You know, I don't have any bullet points, no Monroe Doctrine, no historical facts, no quotes. Someone suggested to me earlier today that famous naval battles that were turning points in history. I thought about that. Anyway, the best I could come up with, best I could come up with, you know, the 10 Commandments, pretty good rules, the Golden Rule. But over the years, I've added to that. I've come up with Bill's 50 pretty good rules for life. And so you're going to get subjected to that. Rule 1, always play by the rules. See you next week.